in addition to needing to evolve, for me, it was almost a mental necessity because I like new challenges. And every time I felt like we kind of reached stability with something that we were doing, it was almost like, all right, now I'm getting bored and I need to find something else to challenge me. So
this is the How to Quit Working Show. Jeff Steinman believes entrepreneurship is the only true path to freedom. That's why he created the How to Quit Working Show, where you'll hear stories, insights, and inspiration from lifestyle fanatics who left their soul-sucking 9-to-5 job forever. Now, here's your host, author, entrepreneur, and ultimate lifestyle fanatic, Jeff Steinman.
Hello and welcome to the How to Quit Working Show. Today we're going to be talking to Michael Epstein. Michael started a multi-million-dollar business. We're going to do something a little different the next couple episodes. We're going to be talking to folks, not every episode, but because they're going to be sprinkled in, and I'll let you know when they happen. But we're going to be talking to folks who've created multi-million-dollar businesses. Now, one of the things that I like about the How to Quit Working Show, and I believe that you like as well, because you tell me this, is that we talk to ordinary, everyday people. And let's face it, ordinary, everyday people, generally speaking, don't have multi-million-dollar businesses. They have maybe $250,000 businesses, maybe 100,000 or less businesses, but they're very, very happy. Is kind of the theme among everyone on the show. But I think it's also important to bring in the mix the fact that you can be extremely financially successful as an entrepreneur, and I want to show you some people who are financially successful as well. And all of these people, as I ask every single one of my guests on the show, I'm going to ask them the question of, what does success mean to you? And I haven't recorded this is the only one of these that has actually been recorded. So I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say, and I don't have the answer to this in advance, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say none of them are going to say that it's about the money. But I'm going to ask every single one of them what success means to them, and we will see if any of them say that success is all about the money. So mark my words, nobody's going to say that, but you'll see. And if I'm wrong, then I can just be publicly wrong. So anyway, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. Glad to be back again. I've been on vacation for the past week and a half or so, so I've been kind of out of the saddle. All the shows were pre-recorded in advance, which is one of the things that's really, really cool about doing a podcast and having the ability to use technology to make things happen when you're not around and to have people to help you and all that great stuff. So I'm excited to be back. I feel like I've been away from the show for a while, but I know it doesn't seem that way to you because through the magic of technology, I've been right here with you 3 times a week for the past, 18 months or something like that. But anyway, glad to be back and glad to be doing another show, and just want to remind you that the How to Quit Working group on Facebook is going stronger than ever, even while I was gone. Heather was out there, had some great interaction. I saw some really, really great conversations that folks have been having out there, and so don't miss that. Go to howtoquitworking.com/group, click on Join Group, and then that will send the request in, and then we'll approve that request right away. One of the new things that we're doing now in the How to Quit Working group on Facebook is we are moderating all the posts. So we are making sure that garbage and blog posts and just a lot of junk that you're already inundated with, that's not coming through in the group. Because I don't want folks to leave the group because it's really valuable as you're starting a business. I want folks to leave it because they're seeing a bunch of boring crap that they're not interested, or a bunch of articles being posted and stuff like that they can see everywhere else and that they're already inundated with in their Facebook feed. So we are moderating everything. Don't let that stop you from posting stuff because we want to hear it from you. Just go out there and join the group, introduce yourself, and jump into the conversation. It's a great group of people having a great conversation about quitting your job and starting a business. Now, without any further ado, I want to welcome Michael Epstein to the show. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, glad to have you here. And you've got you've got a really neat story. You know, I wanted to talk to some folks. We interview successful entrepreneurs on the show all the time, but I said, you know what? Let's do something a little bit different. Let's interview entrepreneurs with really successful businesses. And I just decided to define that as more than $1 million in annual revenue. And you actually started a video game accessories company and a bunch of other stuff, and recently sold that, and looking forward to kind of hearing about what you learned in that process. Tell us a little bit about what was going on in your life that made you decide you were going to start a video game accessory company.
We started the company almost 15 years ago now, while I was in college, full-time in Maryland, and also working as the IT manager at a local retail consulting firm.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah. So my best friend from childhood was actually going to school in Florida and went to Universal Studios, where he put on the 3D glasses on one of those movie rides where the images pop out at you, and called me up after and said, we should make people's video games do that on their home computer. And I said, that sounds like a good idea. So the next day we decided to start researching it, and found that the technology was being used in more commercial type applications like geomapping and molecular modeling. And we adapted that technology using custom software to work with off-the-shelf video games, and just decided to start a company.
Cool.
And it probably helped that we were a little naive at the time and just were willing to get started, but ultimately found ourselves hustling our way to over $1 million in sales within the first year.
Yeah, what do you mean when you say it helped that you were a little bit naive at the time?
Now 15 years later, with a family and a mortgage and all of that, I probably would consider myself a little more risk averse, but at the time it was always, I've always been entrepreneurial and was always looking for exciting opportunity. And, at that time in my life, I was willing to just say, let's give this a shot. And that's what we did.
Yeah. No, that sounds cool. Now, so you just kind of saw this technology and you said, okay, I could take this existing technology and apply it to something that it's not currently being applied to, but I think it would be pretty cool. And apparently some people agreed with you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We spent a lot of that first year really just trying to understand the market, because we really didn't have an understanding of how to resonate with our target customer, how to even find where our target customer was. This was when e-commerce and the internet was still, fairly new, and getting the word out was a challenge, and we didn't know how to really do any of that and had to figure it out along the way. But ultimately we found some success by getting our some customers ended up posting about our products on some popular websites at the time, and almost overnight we started seeing more orders than we had in the previous many months leading up to that point, figured out where they were coming from, and figured out how to kind of leverage those sources to grow the business and build it from there.
Excellent. So now, was it a software product or a hardware product, or how did it work?
It was a combination. So
Okay.
It was this technology, the hardware kind of was in existence. We found a source that could supply it to us. And originally we were just buying it wholesale, the glasses themselves, from a commercial supplier. But as we continued to grow, we worked our way kind of up the manufacturing food chain, and we're ultimately producing our own hardware technology. But the entire time we were bundling it with the software that we had created, which is what allowed that technology to be used with off-the-shelf video games.
I got you. So you bundled a piece of hardware that you were able to source and eventually manufacture with some software that you created to kind of make it actually work.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, so tell me about when you were creating the software, you're creating the unique thing that became your product. How much of your focus was on the actual creation of that product versus figuring out who wanted it, how do you reach those people, how do you talk to them, kind of the whole marketing and sales aspect of it?
That's a great question, and I was actually talking to someone about this recently because I probably made the mistake that I now find lots of entrepreneurs making at the time, and that was having the idea but not having the understanding of whether there was a market for it, whether you thought there was an existing need that wasn't being met, and actually talking to customers during the development process and understanding both what their needs were from a product standpoint and then where they kind of live online and how to market to them. And that's what took, I think, one of the main reasons that it took us so long to start generating traction, because we had what we thought was a good idea, but not really the understanding of the market. It was like, okay, let's build this product and then figure it out. And a lot of entrepreneurs, I find, do the same thing. And I think you would save yourself a lot of time by investing the time up front to really start to understand the answers to those kinds of questions during the development process of your product.
We hear that so much on the show. We hear that whole concept of, it's not about the idea. It's about the execution of the idea and understanding who actually is interested in that thing that you're creating and why do they want it and how much are they willing to spend for it and so on. Now, when you say it took you a long time to get traction, I think we might want to put that in perspective for our listeners a little bit, because you actually made considerable income pretty quickly with this venture, right?
Yeah, so that's true. We were, fortunate that once it started catching on, it kind of caught on quickly. But it took us, about 9 months or so of just kind of a trickle of interest until it kind of hit around that first holiday season, and that's when things really started to take off quickly.
Excellent. So what, throughout that process of kind of figuring out, how do you create this company? How do you do this? How do you bring this thing to market? What was kind of the biggest lesson that you learned?
Sure. We leveraged, family and friends to help get things off the ground as much as possible. I mean, we started in our college dorm rooms with a couple $100 and never took out a loan or raised any money for many, many years after that. So we really had to be creative. We were utilizing, for our first website, we used a college friend that was looking to build his website development portfolio. So he did it for us for dirt cheap. For our incorporation documents, I used the father of a good friend of mine who was a partner at a law firm, and they agreed to essentially do some of the upfront legal work at nominal cost in exchange for our future business. We even, we went to friends and family to try and sell our first, the first sets of products that we were making, and then just poured that revenue right back into the business. We utilized, we tried to create an internship program for some of the students at the colleges that we were at so that we could get some help that way at a low cost for marketing and other types of business needs. So we did a lot of that, and then kind of on the marketing side, we utilized a lot of grassroots PR. We had to we tried to send review samples to a lot of publications, and that's ultimately what helped get us a lot of traction. We went to it wasn't about trying to go to Oprah as our first target or the Today Show or something like that. It was trying to find really targeted niche sites that kind of were in the second or third tier in our industry that would be very receptive to a small company and a new product. And as we kind of built momentum amongst that group of media publications and websites, it started raising our profile so that we could start approaching some of the bigger sites.
Interesting. So I'm kind of I'm not a video game guy, but I think that from having
I'm not either.
Oh, that's interesting. That may have been an advantage in you creating this company.
Right.
But, what I do know about that industry is you kind of got I think like IGN maybe. There's like this one kind of really big gaming site that everybody goes to.
Yeah, you're right.
And then you got second tier, third tier, fourth tier. So it sounds like you kind of started at the lower tiers, the sites that maybe only had a couple thousand or even a couple hundred views a month, and getting on to maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 of those sites, then positions you to go to that next tier up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And while some of these sites might want the scoop, they want they want the first look. They get inundated with pitches, as I'm sure you know and can imagine. So, we really had to focus on building the credibility of our brand amongst those lower tier kind of publications, and that helped these people take notice. And even if it wasn't with the first product, maybe it was for our next products that we could introduce and say, here's what people are saying about our company and the products we've put out. Here's the latest, if you want to scoop on that.
Yeah. Now, you talked a lot about kind of how you bootstrap, you used favors, friends of friends, other college students and stuff to get stuff done. Now, I'm trying to figure out from the hardware acquisition side, right? So how did you have a sort of a situation where you were just buying a small amount of the hardware so that as you fulfilled the orders you didn't have a lot of inventory, or how did you kind of manage that inventory piece when you had so little working capital?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Another good question. We had to work through, as I mentioned, we were just purchasing wholesale in very small quantity from our original supplier, and therefore our margins on it were not very good. But for us, it was really about just trying to prove that there was a market and a demand for the product, and we knew that if we could start generating more volume, that we could create more margin there, and that's really what we did. But there was not a lot of margin up front, and I think that's something also that entrepreneurs in general, they kind of have to balance that risk with the potential reward. You either have to be willing to sacrifice margin to kind of prove your model in a smaller scale, and then work your way up, or you have to commit to a large amount of inventory up front if you're selling a product. And I think for most people, it can be a challenge to commit to significantly high volume, and maybe you don't even want to, because maybe the product needs to be refined before you can start increasing that volume. And we ultimately made a lot of changes to the hardware side as we worked our way up in the manufacturing supply chain.
I see. So early on, you would get an order in and you would just buy a very small quantity of the hardware. And because you were buying such a small quantity and you didn't really have any purchasing leverage at that point, you were making very little on each product. But it sounds like you weren't as interested in making that money on each product because you were interested in proving out the product, that people actually wanted the product. And you were willing to not make a lot of money in the initial phases of it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we really didn't have a choice, and we were comfortable with that, and it was about just trying to survive and make a few bucks on each, and know that if it caught on, that the money would come later.
Would you recommend to someone else who's doing something similar that they take a similar approach?
I have to say yes, and not just because we did it. I just think that as I was mentioning, you don't know what the reaction is going to be to the product. You don't know that you've nailed every aspect of it correctly, and committing to a large amount of inventory up front is something that, if you're a giant company, you can take those kinds of risks, and if the thing is a giant flop, it's not going to put you out of business.
Yeah.
For most entrepreneurs, you just don't have that option. If you make a really bad bet on something, your whole company is in jeopardy, and that's something we were always pretty conscious of. We really never put ourselves in a position. We would take a lot of risks, and risks are definitely necessary in any sort of entrepreneurial company and any company. But at the same time, we tried to manage our risk in a way that we knew the worst case scenario was not going to take the entire company with it.
Sure. So as you were giving up profits in the early months, you still had to eat, you still had to pay rent, you still had to pay, put gas in your car and all that stuff. How did you guys manage all of that? Well,
we really were running it out of our college dorm rooms for the first little while, and I was still working a good amount at at the consulting firm to try and pay the bills. And really, it was only once we started getting enough traction that we were willing to kind of move into this full time, and that was maybe 6 months into it that we actually committed full time, and then we were running it out of the basement of a really low rent townhouse while we were sleeping upstairs. So for us, it really was just about survival for a while, and luckily after the first year, we kind of could take a little breath and say, I don't think the doors are going to shut on us tomorrow, at least.
So tell us a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about when you reached that point where, okay, you were pretty sure this was going to make it, and you were not eating ramen noodles. You were maybe eating sirloins or something like a step up from ramen noodles.
Or sirloin-flavored ramen.
Sirloin-flavored ramen noodles. How did that process go, and what did it feel like to kind of reach that point where you kind of knew that you had something and you could see where it was going to go?
It's funny because I don't know. I know there was a day where I recognized that the doors weren't going to close tomorrow. But as kind of coming up through that culture of bootstrapping, and I don't think there was ever a day that I said this is definitely something that's going to last indefinitely, and we don't need to stay really sharp because things can't just turn on us.
Sure. And I think the minute you say that, your company's done.
Yeah, I would agree.
Regardless of where you are.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. I think that when we hit the $1 million mark in sales, it was like, okay, we have we have enough money kind of in the bank that we could start taking a few more risks. We could start living as though, again, the doors aren't going to just shut on us tomorrow, but we need to just keep evolving, because the day we stop figuring out how to grow this business, as you mentioned, is the day that, you start the decline.
Sure.
So yeah, I kind of started feeling comfortable after we hit the $1 million mark that we could, we could breathe a little bit, but always was focused on making sure that we were evolving and growing one way or another.
Sure. So what happened next as the company grew and grew? What were some of the next big milestones?
Sure. So we did start to introduce more products in our product line, starting with the gaming accessories. So took a similar approach to what you were mentioning before in terms of taking some technologies and adapting them to the video gaming market. So we created voice recognition software, for example, that allowed you to tell the video game, execute commands in a video game with voice commands. We took technology that created kind of that rumble force feedback effect that you might feel in like game controllers and other types of devices, and put that into a headset so that you could feel explosions in the audio and all that.
Cool.
So kind of made those kinds of adapted those kinds of sensory technologies to other types of products.
How did you know? How did you know what to do? How did you know to do the rumbling or the sound effects? How did you know what your audience wanted?
So in the early stages, we were still really relying on intuition, and we we're fortunate that for the most part it worked out, and again managed the risk in a way that if we really didn't get any traction initially, it wasn't going to kill us. We made, for the most part, most of our bets were correct, and then maybe our next generation of that product, we used a lot of feedback to make significant improvements, and maybe took more risk in terms of the volume that we would order in that case, because we had a lot of feedback and some track record to go on at that point.
Sure.
Over the years, though, as we started to evolve, it became a lot more about listening to the customers up front, surveying kind of the competitive landscape to an extent, but more putting out surveys to our customers, searching through our customer interactions, like the customer service requests and the sales requests, and keeping logs of that, and starting to track what types of things people were showing interest in, and then using that as a guide to start developing the different types of products that we got involved in.
Excellent, excellent. So tell us a little bit more about kind of the evolution, kind of what happened next.
Sure. So we once we kind of had we built an e-commerce platform to sell our own products, and built kind of an operational infrastructure for fulfillment, like warehousing and all of that. And then we wanted to figure out how to leverage that further, because we thought we had something that could scale, and we wanted to potentially look to expand that beyond the core product line that we had. So one of the industries that we got a ton of traction in with our products was the flight simulation industry. So people that buy like Microsoft Flight Simulator and use it, that's like their primary hobby. They set up a home flight simulator, and you can buy all the accessories and pedals and yokes and fly any type of plane from New York to LA, and it's very realistic. So obviously you could see why, maybe our 3D glasses and other products kind of resonated with that user base.
Yeah, sure.
So we ended up partnering with the largest flight simulation website to be their e-commerce, their official e-commerce partner, and consolidated all of the hundreds of different vendors that were producing hardware and software for this market into kind of a one-stop shop for that type of product, and used the platform that we had built for e-commerce and our infrastructure to service that, and really did the same thing. We grew that from zero to over $1 million in sales within the first year by relying on them to provide us with the traffic, and leveraging their credibility in the industry and our ability to service the back end, really, and our knowledge of e-commerce and conversion rates and marketing, to grow that business. And so that was really the next big leap for us. And then over time, we kind of applied the same sort of process and ultimately started or acquired a couple of other e-commerce retail sites. And by the end, we had several different e-commerce retail sites, and that had become the bulk of our revenue.
Were they all in the gaming industry, or did you branch out into different industries?
They were fairly related. So, flight simulation was in the gaming industry, although they would consider themselves not gamers, but it kind of was the same thing. And
they're above that, they would say.
Right. And one of our other big sites was also a computer accessories retail site. So not specifically focused on gaming, but again, a lot of overlap. So we did kind of understand the consumer at that point, and we could kind of draw correlations between them, and I think that definitely helped us.
So you really kind of, your company kind of changed from a video game accessories company into an e-commerce fulfillment company.
It did in a lot of ways, and by the time we were acquired, the 3D glasses were an inconsequential part of our business.
Oh, wow. So the very thing that started your business and got it going, by the time you were acquired, was just one small product on the shelf. Exactly.
If you looked back, you just wouldn't even really recognize the company from where we started, and I think that's what enabled us to continue for that long. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, you just have to continue to evolve and look for the right opportunities, and that's what we did one way or another.
What motivated you through the whole process?
I just enjoy the entrepreneurship challenge. I think, in addition to needing to evolve, for me, it was almost a mental necessity because I like new challenges. And every time I felt like we kind of reached stability with something that we were doing, it was almost like, all right, now I'm getting bored and I need to find something else to challenge me. So I'm sure you hear that from a lot of entrepreneurs as well. But so I think that the need to evolve and kind of my need to continue to find new challenges kind of worked well together to make sure that the company evolved. That's pretty much how that worked out.
Well, speaking of new challenges, you've sold the company now. What's next for you?
Well, I've been doing a lot of consulting. Everybody asked me how long I was going to take off after we were acquired, especially having put in so much time over the years. And I told myself that I would take, that I wouldn't rush into anything, and I would take some time. And after a week of sitting around, that was as much time as I could take without my mind staying active. So I started doing a lot of consulting for other online businesses primarily and other entrepreneurs, and I really enjoy it for a lot of the same reasons. I really enjoy the process of learning about something completely new, figuring out how to take pieces of my experience and knowledge and apply it to different businesses and figure out a way to improve that. So I really do enjoy that aspect of consulting, kind of working with these entrepreneurs with interesting businesses and helping identify ways for them to grow. But I'm also always looking for new challenges as well, like that I may get into in a more intimate capacity, whether it's starting something myself again or looking for the right group of people that have something really promising that we can really make a difference.
Very cool. Michael, what does success mean to you?
I think success just means the ability to kind of do what makes you happy and not worry about it financially, to within reason. So for me, it's really about the ability to start spending a lot more time with my family and get to enjoy that time without feeling like I'm constantly having to worry about the next paycheck or exactly how many hours I worked the last week.
Excellent. Michael, what's the last piece of advice you want to leave our listeners with?
I think one good piece of advice is while it's important to listen to feedback from everybody else as you're working on your company, also definitely don't ignore your own intuition. I think that intuition has served me well over the years, and things that I was always kind of questioning and kind of went against my intuition never seemed to work out quite right. And at the same time, you need to follow your gut to be an entrepreneur, I think, because you're always going to hear a lot of people telling you why things aren't going to work, and at some point you just need to say, I'm going to give it a try and try and make it work and put in the effort that's going to be required.
Excellent. Michael, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your hard-earned years of experience as an entrepreneur with our listeners. I know they all appreciate it. I appreciate it, and I wish you the best of luck in all of your future endeavors, whatever that may be.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Jeff, and hope it was helpful. And if anybody wants to reach me, feel free to reach out. Get Online With Me is my website and Twitter handle. So feel free to ask me any questions if you're an entrepreneur.
Get Online With Me?
Yeah, getonlinewithme.com.
I will link that up below the show. Thanks so much, Michael.
Absolutely. Thanks for the time.
And there we have it. Another successful entrepreneur comes on the show and just generously shares everything that they've learned through probably one of the hardest things that they've ever done in their life, and they just come on the show and just generously share it with us. It just never ceases to amaze me how kind and generous all of these successful entrepreneurs that we talk to are. hey, Michael invited you to reach out to him, so reach out to him. You can get all of his information below the show at howtoquitworking.com, and take advantage of that, right? When somebody successful gives you the opportunity to reach out to them, you got to take advantage of that. Shoot him your questions. I know there's folks out there who are thinking about starting technology-based businesses, and Michael might have some really great advice for you. In fact, I'm sure that he will. Speaking of really great advice and having somebody to help you through the process, at How to Quit Working, we now offer coaching. So go to howtoquitworking.com/coaching and find out more about How to Quit Working coaching and our How to Quit Working coach, Heather Osgood, who is excited to be starting a new chapter in her life where, after having started multiple successful businesses, she is now excited to help people quit their jobs and start their own businesses. So go to howtoquitworking.com/coaching and learn more about that. And then I will talk to you next time on the How to Quit Working Show.
Thanks for joining us on the How to Quit Working Show. Tune in next time when we'll talk to another amazing person just like you who is now living the ultimate life of freedom and doing it on their terms. If you want to learn how to quit working and get these episodes delivered directly to you, visit howtoquitworkingshow.com.